Begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this writer and artist virtual panel. My name is Frederick Smith. I'm the author of 6 queer fiction novels centering the lives of Black queer characters in California, including my latest One and Done, which we'll talk about a little bit later. In all of our introductions, we'll talk about our works and everything. I'm so glad that you all could make it live or by watching the recording today. The session that you're watching is entitled Blurbs, Pride, Books, and More, featuring authors Katrina Jackson and Aaron Foley and me. We welcome you, whether or not you are watching live or watching this as a recording after we've recorded this. And today we're talking about various aspects of author life, writing fiction, romance, erotica, and life as Black authors today. If you're watching live and you have questions, please feel free to add them to the chat and we'll get to them as we can throughout the session. But first, our author panel. Let's welcome Katrina Jackson and Aaron Foley to the conversation today. Yay! So let me turn this fan off in the background. So before we begin with our panel today, both of you and one of you can decide, introduce yourself and tell viewers, listeners about you, your books and your genres. How did you get into writing? Anything you want to share with people to get people familiar with who you are and your life as either a person or your life as a writer person as well. How about Katrina? Would you like to go first?
Okay, sure. So I'm Katrina Jackson. I write a few different genres of romance, like romantic suspense, erotic romance. I also write erotica and historical fiction, centering around usually at least one Black woman. I write a lot of queer characters and like a lot of found family. I wish I was funny, but I'm not. So I just write a little bit more sex to like make up for it.
I think people like sex in novels. Yay. And Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron Foley. I am underaccomplished sitting next to y'all, but I'm new to I'm old and I'm new to fiction writing. I have one novel, Boys Come First, that centers Black gay characters, and it's contemporary fiction. It gets shelved under romance a lot in the libraries and whatnot. I'm not opposed to writing romance, but if people take it that way, I guess you could classify that as well. Um, and I like to write because when I was little, I enjoyed fiction writing, and I always had that urge to kind of revisit this thing I had started as a child and finish it up as an adult. And that's why I did it. And then also the need to kind of see myself, other Black gay characters, people represented in fiction. So that's why I do that.
Awesome. Thank you both. I'll do a brief introduction as well. My name is Frederick Smith. I use he, him pronouns, and I have written 6 novels featuring Black and queer characters, all set in California, majority set in LA. When I lived in LA, I set my novels in LA. Now I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, so my novels are set now in San Francisco and Oakland. I love romance and romance novels. Most of my novels are either within the romance category or have romantic elements that may or may not follow the formula that readers expect around romance novels per se. And like I shared before, I'm currently in the Bay Area living, but one thing we all have in common, we have some Midwest in common, all 3 of us here on the panel. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and that's where my family resides today. And so I get to go back once, twice, 3 times a year whenever I get a chance over there. And again, thank you all for joining. And Katrina and Aaron, first, I want to thank you all both for doing a blurb for my latest novel, One and Done. Katrina, yours made the back cover and inside of the novel. And Aaron, yours is inside the novel. So this question isn't about me per se or my book at all, but let's talk about the topic of blurbs. And so first, kind of defining what a blurb is. Why are they important for authors to get? What do you think they mean to readers? And how is it for you to ask someone for a blurb or to make a decision about whether or not you would like to provide a blurb to someone? Aaron, how about you go first on this one?
Oh gosh. Okay. So blurbs are both equally, to me, blurbs are both equally important and also terrifying because um I'm happy. I'm personally happy. I'm happy to read another author's work. I'm happy to support another author. I'm happy to kind of give it, right? And I was, and Frederick, I was so honored that you had asked me to blurb One and Done, right? And I offered that. It was a good story. I loved it. And I wanted other people to kind of see like what I thought about it and support Fred and support you in that regard, right? But oh my gosh, I do not like asking other people to read my stuff because I mean it's very humbling, right? The reason why authors ask for blurbs is out of a need for marketing. You get a couple of like recognizable names uh to get on the back of your book cover, on the front of your book cover, wherever it may go. Somebody sees it in the bookstore, somebody sees it in like the Amazon summary and whatnot, and they're like, oh, if so and so liked it, then that means this book must be good too. But a lot of authors say that like, they get inundated with the requests. And so it becomes more like a chore to them. It's not as enjoyable sometimes. I'm not saying that about me. But the big thing is like if you ask an author to read it and you send in the manuscript and then they don't say anything, and it's kind of just like polite, but also kind of impolite ghosting in a way. Because when I sent my manuscript, my baby, out there to a number of writers, I got some good blurbs. I'm deeply appreciative for the folks that did take their time and equally so for the authors who are genuine in their requests. I don't hold anything against the authors who didn't get back to me, but you do kind of feel a little bit ghosted too, and you can't necessarily ask that author why, because maybe they didn't have time for it, maybe they didn't like it. You'll never know. It's kind of like that relationship that ended and you don't get that closure and you're just going to have to live with that. So it's a very tricky game, but it's very necessary to play. So
All right, thank you, Aaron. And I like that phrase, polite ghosting, that you shared in terms of when you don't hear back from another author. Um, Katrina, what about for you and the topic of blurbs and all that?
I don't ask for blurbs. I don't care. Um, I think that I do understand the marketing behind it. I think though that like each reader is different, right? So even if my favorite author loves the book, it doesn't mean that I'll love the book. And it doesn't even mean that like my favorite author or my friends are necessarily my target readership. Um, I would like a book to stand on its own, right? With that said, though, I think that like some readers like take blurbs really seriously, right? They are looking for books blurbed by or people that they enjoy or people who maybe write similar to the book that they're blurbing, which I think is fine because again, every reader is different. Um, but yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to say. It doesn't really matter to me. But like I think when asking for it, I don't get many requests and I don't say yes. I also don't have time. It's the other reality. Like I don't have a lot of time to read anyone's books. So But Fred, your ask was like super targeted, right? It was set in the Bay Area, which is my home. It is set in higher ed. I am a professor. It made perfect sense to ask me, and it's also why I said yes.
Well, thank you so much. And I am very honored and humbled that both of you agreed to say yes. My quick take on blurbs, very similar. I get so nervous asking someone for a blurb. I get nervous even when I come up with this comprehensive list of who I would like to ask and figuring out how to ask. And I think I had a list of about 30 people I was just making notes on my phone, like over holiday break or something like that. And ultimately, both of you and Sandra Santiago and Cherie L. Greer provided blurbs. And so I'm so grateful and thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it. Um, Almost in a way, like blurbs are, you could almost say they're almost like pre-reviews by authors in a way. I'm making a light connection. So let's briefly talk about reviews a bit from readers. Do you read them, not read them? Do you scan for like kind of themes and averages? Do you engage with them? And if you want to, what are your thoughts about one-star reviews? Who would like to take that one first?
Um, I'll I'll start with 1-star reviews. Okay, well, I'll just start with reviews, period. They say all the time that you're not supposed from the author point of view, you're not supposed to read the reader reviews because you get stuck on them. And you're supposed to take that advice, but not a single writer I know has actually taken it, because you cannot resist that temptation to see like, what are people saying about this, right? And so you have to learn very quickly to like accept criticism in a way that you may not be used to. I have a very long journalism career before me, and so I've been used to comment sections, people writing on Facebook, that sort of thing, those kind of comments about stuff I put out there. But at the end of the day, those are nonfiction. Those are just fact-based pieces and whatnot. They live on the internet for a certain amount of time, and then you move on to the next, right? With my first fiction work, my first novel, uh, the first year it was out, I couldn't help but check Goodreads, like, every other day just to see, like, okay, refresh, set from oldest to newest, and then what are people saying? What are people saying? And fortunately for the most part, there are a lot of 3 and 4-star reviews. And people would explain why and why they liked it, why they loved it, so on and so forth. But the 1-star reviews, I learned very quickly to just let them roll off your back, right? Um, the one thing about writing queer fiction is that, especially that some people come to queer fiction looking for a happy ending all the time. Some people come to queer fiction looking to see just for strictly representation of people of color and how well you did that representation. Some, queer fiction readers, for better or for worse, quite honestly, are sometimes looking for a very specific thing with every single book that they read. And if they don't get it, then they'll kind of classify it as a 1-star or a 2-star. You see a lot of reviews that are just like, oh, I came in expecting this, and this, and I only got this, so 1-star. So but like I said, again, you learn very quickly to let those roll off your back, because when the work finds its intended audience, I get far more, love, for lack of a better term, from the folks that are deeply appreciative of it, and it just makes you feel so good inside. So
Thank you, Aaron. Kat, what are your thoughts on reviews and reading them, not reading them?
I don't seek out reviews, so I do not go to Amazon or Goodreads or Storygraph or anything like that. I do see reviews, like I follow some reviewers, I follow some of my readers, so I will see their reviews. And I like appreciate them, like the reviews, even if I mean, I think even if I don't agree with them, like I often learn something. And at the very least, I'll laugh. Like there was, you know, a review of one of my erotic novellas that it was just smut, and I was like, "Thank you for getting the point. Like I truly appreciate that, like, that you got what I was, you know, putting down." But like, I don't think. I definitely don't seek them out. Like I think that that's not like particularly healthy. I also do respect that like, you know, reviews are for readers. And as a reader, I read other people reviews of other books, right? Because I love a good critical review of literally anything. Like I'm an intellectual historian. Like I love like when people break down like media, whether they like it or not. Like I appreciate the like effort and the thought that often goes into them. So again, good or bad, like I do appreciate that. Um, but I for my own books, I think seeking it out is a great way to break your heart. And if you are particularly sensitive, don't do that. And I'm sensitive, so I don't do that.
I'm very sensitive too, and I've learned a good lesson. Tati Richardson, who's an author of a book called The Build Up, told me about a month ago. She was like, "Fred, don't look at them at all. Don't look at reviews, and definitely don't take to heart any ones or twos either, because ultimately it's about the person who's writing it and how they receive it. It has nothing to do with any of us on the screen or the works that we've produced and everything." So I've learned to take a let it roll off your back kind of attitude toward reviews, but definitely respect the fact that people read and engage enough to want to write something about something we have written, because it means that they found something in it that moved them to say something about it. So I do respect reviews in that realm and everything. Wanted to shift a little bit, you know, at the time that we are recording this, we are at the tail end of Pride Month 2024, which celebrates the ranges of genders and sexualities within the queer community. Can you talk to us a little bit about what Pride Month means to you? And like, how do you incorporate themes of pride or empowerment or confidence and identity, etc., in your novels?
I think I guess Aaron and I are just gonna trade like back and forth. That's fine. I'm glad we settled it
I'm a
too.
Libra. I'm all about balance. I was like,
I'm a
you
Virgo.
go.
I just want peace.
Um, so I think that I guess I'll answer the second part, which is like how this sort of shows up in my books. I think that right from the beginning of my career, I was not particularly interested in having conversations about queer people that othered them in their own stories. Like, so I write queer people who are in community with one another, queer people of color, primarily Black people who are in community with one another. I personally am not interested in a sort of coming out story, a traditional coming out story, for a variety of reasons. One, I didn't come out, so it doesn't really make any sense to me. Like this is like who I've always been. But I also think that if I want to write characters, which I do, who are like, you know, fully formed in their identities, no matter where they are in being out, like it just doesn't serve me um to write my characters in a way where they are marginalized still somehow in a story that's supposed to center them. Um, so I think for me that has like sort of always been like a sort of guiding principle, and which doesn't mean I always get it right, but that is a thing that I'm always trying to sort of do to sort of show queer people of color, queer Black people as like fully fledged people on the page, who are also reflective of like, if not my own experience, oh, there's my cat. if not, if not my own experiences, then like those of people like who I love and who I've known. Which for me, I think at the end of the day is also the point of pride. So
All right, thank you for that. Aaron, any thoughts on Pride Month and how pride and identity is reflected in Boys Come First, or anything else that you've written?
Um, I'm gonna try and put this in a way that is not like tooting my own horn or hyping myself up, but literally today, I have a job working in journalism, and I'm news editor of the New York Amsterdam News. It's the oldest Black weekly, not just in New York State, but it's the oldest surviving Black weekly newspaper, period. And tomorrow is Thursday, and the paper comes out every week on Thursdays. But we just closed on our first ever Pride Month themed issue in 114 years of publication. For many,
Congratulations.
yeah, like it's not about me. It's not about me. That's why I was just like, I need to put this, like, decenter myself as much as possible. But I wrote the cover story for this week's issue, looking back at 114 years of in our archives to see how the newspaper has covered queer people, queer issues in the past. And the reason why we decided to go with this theme and reanalyze 100 years worth plus of coverage is so many people, so many out gay people for years have said, we've always been here, but we've always kind of felt like we've had to compromise or reduce a large part of ourselves to kind of be accepted by the majority. And this is something that a lot of Black queer people have had to contend with their entire lives. It's easier for a lot of younger people, younger than me, I think, to come out, to navigate life holding multiple identities. So many people are like, I'm non-binary, I'm non-gender conforming, and I'm also like this, and this. On the other hand, I know a lot of people older than me who are Black and queer, and they'll readily and obviously identify the Black part, but may not be ready to disclose or share a big part of themselves out of fear of whatever the case may be. And then there are those in between where it's just like, well, I'm going to be gay, but I ain't gonna be that gay or something like that. It varies so much, but because so many people do feel like that they have to compromise or reduce a big part of themselves, a lot of what drives me during Pride, especially as I get older, is I don't like seeing, I'll always respect someone's choice in how they choose to identify, how they choose to live. But it does hurt a little bit to see people having to make that choice and not live fully as what they could be living. And so I try to create fully formed Black queer characters. I try to present myself as a fully formed Black queer real life person in everything I do: job, workplace, any type of social situation. I'm not gonna hide who I am to sort of appease someone else. Far too long in Black communities, like we do kind of have to kind of play this game so many times, and it gets tiring, it gets exhausting, and then I can see people are tired of playing that game, and I ain't got time to be tired. I just I gotta be enjoying myself, enjoying life. And so being, celebrating Pride to me means acknowledging my Black side 100%, and also acknowledging my queer side 100% as well, and having both.
Love that. And thank you all both for sharing about, how you draw out and infuse queerness into the characters who identify as queer along the spectrums and everything. Wonder if we could take a deeper dive into Black Pride events. So specifically like creating and centering spaces for, about, and centering Black queer people. When you think about Black Pride events, the significance of them, what are some things that come to mind? And I brought up this question because actually yesterday or a couple of days ago, I was listening to a podcast called Bad Queers, and the host and the guest on the show were talking about how they are surprised that even in the year that we are, 2024, that there may be some gay people or say some queer people or some Black queer people who are still questioning the value of and the need for Black queer pride events. What are some of your thoughts around Black queer prides and the festivals that happen to celebrate Blackness and queerness in the same space?
All right, we'll do the trade-off. Okay. If I start rambling, please cut me off because I have some thoughts. There are in a nutshell, there are some things that are culturally specific to Black communities that other communities I respectfully ask them to kind of observe, but don't try to imitate, right? And so there is a need for Black queer people to kind of feel safe amongst ourselves, amongst our own company, right? Um, I wrote in the piece that's coming out tomorrow about how there's a lot of Black gay bars specifically that are sort of like Black gay bars are almost an endangered species because they're closing left and right. I referenced the Hangar Bar in West Village in Manhattan. Christopher Street, legendary street in gay culture. Most of the hangout spaces are all inclusive, but they do tend to be mostly white. The Hangar Bar was undoubtedly the Black gay space in all of Christopher Street, and they closed earlier this year without a lot of fanfare. But a lot of Black gay patrons were devastated because, it was the safe space on Christopher Street where they could be wholly themselves and not have to worry about, whether they be accepted there or not. But then I think about Frederick, the Woodward in Detroit, a longtime staple of Black Black gay life. For many of us Black gays who grew up in Detroit, largest Black city in the country, by the way. The Woodward was our first stop in journeying to discover ourselves. And 2 years ago, a month after, or less than a month after my novel came out, which the Woodward is kind of its own character in the novel, the Woodward burned down. And still question marks over what exactly happened with the fire, but there has not been a Black gay space in Detroit, a targeted Black gay space that, let's say it like that. This is not to say that in Detroit, Black gays aren't welcome to go to other places like Menjo's and Soho and all the rest of the bars in the Metro Detroit area, but there has not been a fully formed Black space that has taken the Woodward's place. And such is the case in other places like DC, a couple of other cities across the country where these spaces are closing for whatever reason or another, and nothing is coming in their space. And it does leave like a void when, again, it's not to say that we can't go to the more mainstream leaning gay spaces, but we do need those places where we can just be amongst families. So,
All right, thank you, Kat.
Yeah, I mean, I ditto to everything Aaron said. I think that like a slightly different sort of way to answer the question for me, like especially as a historian, is sort of thinking about how often like um in Pride, like we sort of have this kind of retelling of like queer history that begins and ends, to some extent with Stonewall, right? um and I, like, as an adult, sort of confronted that as someone who grew up in Oakland and who grew up surrounded by queer Black people, like whether or not like that was the language they used to identify themselves, like I understood, right, that there are queer Black people in my community. Um, and I think each Pride, when I'm thinking about like how I engage as a person online, as a professor, like as just a queer woman, I'm thinking about that, right? That like for me, Pride really is about like queer Black people. It quite literally, like when I'm thinking about like the people that I read, when I'm thinking about, the people who when I was a kid, like wanting to write, like when I was a student, like, studying for my PhD, I was reading queer Black people, right? Like I was being taught by them. I was in community with them. And so I think each pride, especially as an author, I'm thinking about and highlighting queer Black people. Because which I'm gonna do a thing I actually really hate, but whatever. Like, it is not to say that there are non-Black people who are not important to me, right? But like, it is so easy for us in our history to be lost in conversations about pride. So, like, yeah, I echo everything Erin said because like those spaces aren't just spaces, right, where we found one another, but often they're the only places that remember us, right? They're the only places that are invested in our well-being. And so I think that I always focus on pride on Black queer people, not because the other people in other queer communities don't matter, but because we also matter. And it is important to me, especially as a historian, to like not lose sight of that.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. And I think about what's the academic word, the DART, DEARTA, of Black queer spaces, even I'm thinking specifically around San Francisco and the Bay Area. Oakland has some Black queer spaces that may not be owned, but are spaces that we take up. I often hear from some of the elders here in San Francisco about what was that place? They always talk about some place called the Pendulum that was a big Black queer space in the middle of the Castro. But I don't think the space was owned by Black people. And so, as racial politics happen, Black people often may get pushed to the bottom and pushed out of spaces because of that whole idea of not being able to own the spaces that maybe they run, 7 nights a week or 3 nights a week or something like that. And at some point, a couple of things we're going to do. One, if you all want to get prepared, maybe to read 1 or 2 pages from a work that you have, that would be cool. But then also, I want you to be thinking about, and we can all share some recommendations that might be centering Black and queer, whether it's nonfiction or fiction that we want to share as well. But would any of you like to do a quick reading from either a work in progress, something that's about to come out, or the book that came out a couple years ago, or anything like that?
I'll be happy to do it, but I gotta go get it.
Okay, so how about while you go get it?
How was I say, Kathy?
Okay, how about while you go get it, either Kat or I could read something, and then I have something I could read, and then
I do have something to read. I just actually literally hate reading out loud. So I
really,
don't.
okay, then
I
then
can't.
we won't. It'll be challenged by choice. If you would like to read, you can read out loud. I will share just the first page from and then show or at least show your cover of whatever's your latest. So One and Done is my latest. Um, Honey Pot,
Honey
yay!
Pot is my latest.
So how about tell us a little bit about Honey Pot and maybe just the elevator pitch, the summary, and things like that.
Okay, that I can do, even though I'm bad at elevator pitches. But Honey Pot is the latest in my romantic suspense series that is almost entirely queer. And this is an interracial romance between a stripper slash hacker, Shantae, who's pansexual, and her spy lover, who is also pansexual, Asif. Okay, all right, my cat's acting up. Who is trifling. But this one is sort of set in Europe where like Asif has gone missing and Shantae has made it her mission to find her man. And in my series, that usually means having sex with as many people as they can. It's fun.
Love it, love it. So while you tend to your cat, Aaron and I will pull up a page or two from ours. Aaron, who wants to go first? You, me?
You got something ready? Because I
I have
gotta.
something ready. I have something ready, and I'm just gonna read from the first page of One and Done. For those who aren't familiar with it, my elevator pitch is I call it a Black queer higher ed Bay Area romance novel that follows an aspiring university president as one of the romantic leads who has a fun and cringy meet cute with someone who, Dustin McMillan, who is going to be the project manager on a project that Taylor James is working on and leading on. So I'll read the first page of One and Done. It's out now on Bold Strokes Books. Dustin McMillan poured into my life as effortlessly as the top shelf tequila going into the first margarita of the afternoon that Markel was shaking up for me. I was sitting alone in my usual seat adjacent to the bar at Beau, where I could chat with my best friend Markel, who was mixing up drinks for the Sunday drag brunch crowd. The DJ had just lowered the music a bit for hostess and performer Miss Coco Hydrate to get the drag brunch going. She'd asked us to get our singles out for the queens performing their interpretations of Beyonce's Renaissance album. Still a favorite of all the Black and brown gays, even after all the time the album had been out, even after most of the gays had been to one of the Renaissance World Tour concerts, and even as we eagerly anticipated Beyonce's next project. And as I always did on Sunday afternoons, I reached into my chocolate Telfar bag and took 220s out to change into singles for the drag performers. Only $40? This guy asked as he sidled up near to me and sat in an empty bar stool 2 seats over. Renaissance has 16 tracks, and you're barely tipping $2 per performance in expensive-ass San Francisco? So that begins the meet cute of Taylor James and Dustin McMillan in One and Done. It came out in June 2024 on Bold Strokes Books. Aaron, I will turn it over to you.
So I did run and get a copy of my own book. And so my elevator pitch is I wanted to basically do a waiting to exhale for Black gay men. That's the elevator pitch. I think we should all be somewhat familiar with either Waiting to Exhale, the novel, the film, or both. But I wanted to do something that followed the lives of some 30-somethings trying to navigate their careers, their love lives, their relationships with their love relatives, the place that they live, and more importantly, their friendship amongst themselves, which is what Terry McMillan did so beautifully well with the women in Waiting to Exhale. And so that was my North Star with creating my 3 characters with a Black gay millennial twist. And so I'm going to read briefly from chapter 11 of mine. The context is this is a 30-something Black gay male who has recently broken up with his longtime partner after catching him cheating. And he has to start all over again with the dating apps that are now available that he never used because he was faithful to his partner. Now he's got to get used to going on Grindr and Jacked and Scruff and all these types of apps for the first time. And it's not going well because those apps are horrendous when it comes to dating. And so that's the context for our one of our lead 3 characters. His name is Dominic. It was never supposed to come to this, but here Dominic was anyway, sitting in the dark of his mother's house, deep down in this hole he wasn't sure who dug, about to look for love on his phone again. Dominic was old enough to remember a time when online dating was new and capricious, how risky it used to feel to meet a stranger through fiber optics. Roger Troutman, Shirley Murdoch, and Charlie Wilson sang about computer love, but that shit wasn't supposed to be real. Things were different now. Desktop matchmaking had moved to the smartphone, and Black Gay Chat, Adam for Adam, and Manhunt were all but fossilized in amber. And Dominic was nervous because after 8 years of not having to log in and to find love, here he was again, new to all of this. Otters are in style, girl, his friend Remy had told him, attempting to boost Dominic's confidence. Besides, every gay man in Detroit is like 2 degrees of dick away from each other. You're fresh meat. They'll be all over you. The profiles Dominic swiped through day after day were all over, all right. Recently, his left swipes had included, in no particular order, Elon Musk fanboys, guys prefacing their profiles with quote-unquote perks of dating me, Black men who describe themselves as spiritual, men looking for my king or my prince, quote-unquote sapiosexuals, men with no discernible means of income who describe themselves as self-employed, skinny white boys who use the word thick, that's spelled THICC, men whose profiles included only pictures of feet, scary white men with busty blonde women looking for threesomes, bare minimum white boys who pose with an askew peace sign above their head, black men dressed like pastors, black men in Steve Harvey suits, black men who pose in photos as if they were a Sears portrait studio in 1992, and those who advertise surprise butt touches as a selling point. Dominic took a swig of the red wine he pilfered from his mother's wine rack and he sighed. I'm sitting in my mama's house with a glass of Cabernet, swiping through men, hoping one might make a husband, he thought. Is this how eternity begins? With a wolf or a white swipe? It had been 8 weeks since his return to Detroit. Dominic had had 103 matches on Tinder in a radius of more than 50 miles. Of that 103, only 46 had led to conversation, and of that 46, 15 had progressed past, hey. There was a clear script everyone had memorized. Usually it would start with the exchange of a quote, nice pick, handsome, and then a same to you and a what's up. If it moved past pleasantries, the guy would ask Dominic about hanging out sometime. Hanging out could either mean hooking up or maybe just something less forward, and Dominic would mindlessly answer, sure. You respond, it was sure for white gays and okay for the black gays because the goat switching never ended. At this point, it really didn't matter to him. They'd go out once, have drinks, and talk aimlessly about Detroit and work. Dominic rarely got into how bad things were going at his own job. They'd avoid all questions about marriage and kids, talking instead about the latest streaming phenomenon or Azalea Banks' latest tirade. Then they go to one of their places and fuck. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's Boys Come First. And Katrina shared the elevator pitch for Honeypot, which I hope that all of you all who are listening or watching will go Google and find after this and pick up a copy, whether you buy it, borrow it, etc. and everything. So we may have some aspiring, and I also just want to share, I wrote a blurb for Aaron Foley's Boys Come First too. So I really enjoyed the novel as well. I think my blurb kind of called it a like a I can't remember the whole, but I remember it pulled together Noah's Ark meets Waiting to Tell meets Insecure, something like that is what I think I said. Yeah.
Imagine the 30-something angst of Insecure, meaning the queer Black friendships of Noah's Ark, intersecting with the dating dilemmas of Waiting to Exhale. See, you got it. All rolled up into the dynamics of a gentrified Detroit, and you've got Boys Come First, says Frederick Smith. So thank you, Frederick.
Oh, you are very welcome. It was my pleasure. And Kat, if you ever, I know you don't seek them, but if you ever want a blurb or just want a hey, I'd be happy to give a hey for one of your novels and everything. So you know, we may have some people listening or watching who are aspiring writers and authors, and you know, we're gonna wind down shortly. What is your writing process? Do you plot, pants, long writing sessions, short ones? And what advice would you give to aspiring authors who are maybe in the same shoes that we are? It looks like we're all balancing day jobs and writing jobs. What's your process and what's some of your advice for writers?
Is it my turn? Okay. So during the academic year, my writing is decided by my teaching schedule, like straight up, which I actually really like. I think some people think that having like another job alongside writing is a detriment, but for me, like it orders my time. So I'm usually the kind of person who wakes up and immediately writes. And if I don't have to go into campus or I don't have to teach that day, I'll write, you know, for most of the morning before I switch to like other tasks. Sometimes I'll also write in the evening. Um, and then usually if I'm teaching, if I have to go into campus, like I have meetings, whatever, then I usually don't actually write those days. So those are days where I am like keeping notes of like things I want to write, or if I have an idea for something, I'll jot that down. Um, or I'm just like letting a book like sort of sit in the back of my head and like sort of work out like a plot problem. I pants. So I run into a whole bunch of plot problems in the middle of a book. I don't ever have any idea what's happening. So those like breaks away from writing are also really helpful. I also tend to write multiple things at once because I'm a mood writer. We talk a lot about mood readers, but like I'm a mood writer. So sometimes I want to write something highly emotional, and because I'm highly emotional, like, and then sometimes I want to write like something funnier or something that is romantic suspense or action. And so I just like will often jump around that way. Um, because like what I love most about writing is that it allows me to be creative in a way that like teaching and being a historian does not. And so um I don't really want to I don't want to get stuck in a rut if I don't have to, right? So if a book is not working, I put down the book and then I work on something else. I read something, whatever. Um, I don't I'm not a fan of forcing something if I don't have to, which is why I also don't like deadlines. I am as much of a sort of go where you let your mind go where you're happiest, and things will come together in time.
Gotcha, gotcha. Aaron, what about for you, your writing process?
My writing process includes texting a DoorDash driver to leave my order on the front porch because I was trying to time it for the end of the end of the thing. And he came early. Um, that's it. Food is very important. Do not write on an empty stomach. No, but seriously, I do not have a rhyme or rhythm to how I approach writing, to keep it all the way real. My first book is, how many pages is this thing? uh about 300 pages, and I was writing little by little of it. It took me maybe about like 6 years in total. And a lot of it was I wasn't sure if I wanted to write a novel or not. I would just like write little things here and there over the years. Over time, the people that have come in and out of my life influenced how I ended up pursuing this thing in the first place. I like to tell the story about, like, two exes, right? One of my exes became one of my best friends, and he gave me some of the best advice about when I first, genuinely started showing interest. I'm like, maybe I think I want to be an author. I want to do it all. I want to multitask. And I told him about the idea I had for the book, and it was originally going to center Black women. And he's like, that's all well and good, but you're not a Black woman. You should not be speaking for them or trying to tell their story. And I was like, but all these other people did. He's like, no, 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 don't do it. Why not tell a story about Black gay men? And so I give him the biggest credit because, like, he made me realize that that lane was possible. On the other hand, I had an ex that I was very petty towards because he too was a writer, and again, I expressed to him my dreams, my ambitions, my wishful thinking about maybe one day being a novelist. And he was like, "Oh, you can write a novel, but I'm going to write mine first, so I can be the writer in the relationship." I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." So challenge accepted, and we broke up. I ain't talked to him ever since, but I put my shit out before he did. And so but along the way I would have big spurts of writing. You put a bottle of red wine in front of me and you'll never know what you might get. Having work, having a day job, a 9 to 5, it can take a lot out of you. So I might text little things to myself on my phone. I'll write little short, I might think of like a funny quote or a funny situation, open up a text edit real fast, jot it down real quick while it's still in my head, and then go back to doing whatever I'm getting paid to do on the job. So it is difficult, quite honestly, to kind of balance for me to balance some full-time leisure writing with all of the ideas that I have in my head. Cat out for you on that one. With the day job, with the social life, with a lot of people have family obligations and then things like that. But what drives me is, like, I keep in the back of my head, if I don't tell this story, somebody else might, and I don't want somebody to take my idea. I'm like, oh, I gotta hurry up and write that because I know so and so is probably thinking about the exact same thing. And but at the end of the day, someone is waiting to read that idea that you have. rattling around in your head, somebody's waiting to read that. And so I don't do it for me. I do it because like I know somebody's waiting for it. So
Right. Thank you. And I will share my writing style, technique, and process in just a second. There is a question slash comment that I wanted to share with you all. And I'm going to keep them anonymous because they didn't say whether or not they wanted their name disclosed. And so it says, great talk. Frederick and Katrina, your books are in my TBR, and I'm so excited to dive in. I really enjoyed Boys Come First. Loved the friendship and the ups and downs of life and dating. Thank you for this talk, especially about blurbs. This was a great listen. So thank you for typing that question and comment to us. And if you have not picked up Boys Come First by Aaron Foley or Honey Pot by Kat Jackson or any of the other, Kat, your collection is like what? Like 20, 30, 40? How many have you written?
It's definitely not 40. Like you're just
Uh-huh.
doing a lot. It's like 20 something. I don't count though, but whatever.
Okay. So yes, please be sure to pick up whether you're purchasing it, borrowing it at a library, finding it at an independent space, but definitely our websites. We will have links and we'll talk about how to get in contact with us in just a second. For me, my writing process is I am now a planner slash plotter, meaning I have a huge one of those big post-it notes up with smaller post-its on it with each of my chapters and what I need to happen in them and the beats that I need to hit in terms of story. The reason for that is that I'm now in a different kind of position. I work in a day job in higher education as well. I'm a senior administrator on the campus. And so I don't have as much time to kind of pants, as they call it, or kind of, you know, think about what I want to write next and things. I have to have a plan so that when I do get to the laptop or my phone, that I can just get straight to a point that I have to get to hit and everything. So now I'm a lot more methodical in terms of my process. I'm a morning person. And so for me, getting up at 3:30, 4, 5 in the morning, I call those the quiet hours because no one's texting, no one's emailing, no one has any sense of expectations of me at that time of the morning. And so I just call those quiet hours just beautiful hours when I can just sit and write and have a hot cup of coffee next to me. I don't necessarily have to have food in my stomach at the time, but definitely a hot cup of coffee, the quiet hours, the darkness, but now it's light at 5 in the morning now, and that quiet time to write before work. It's difficult for me to want to do any kind of writing after work. So anytime after like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I think I'm more ready for a happy hour than I am for a writing hour. And so that's a little bit about my process. And for me, it's just a little bit, one of the things I wish I was more methodical about is like that sweet spot moment when right when you finish the manuscript and you're waiting for some kind of publication process to happen. Like to me, I keep thinking that's the spot where I need to work on the next project. But instead, I kind of wait and delay myself in my writing process. But that's a little bit about me. I'm a morning person. I'm a planner. That gets me through the writing process and everything. And so for those of you who are juggling, it's possible to do both a day job and to be a writer. And Kat Jackson, Aaron Foley, and I are examples of that as well. Our final question before we get ready to wind down and everything is what or who are you reading lately? What or who would you recommend people to read, maybe as it relates to any of the topics that we've discussed online today? And then you can close out with how can people reach you and find you on online?
What am I reading? I am reading One and Done by Frederick Smith, which just came. You gotta plug yourself.
This is not about me at all.
You gotta plug yourself and you gotta plug your friends. So uh lately I've been reading a lot of nonfiction. Actually. I have there's a book I read recently called The White Bonus called Tracy McMillan and It's a very long book, but it deals with it's so opposite of what we were talking about tonight. But it does deal a lot with like class and race, and basically how the back of the cover summary is, you know, basically how white people were able to profit off of some of the shortcomings and whatnot in government in a way that Black, Indigenous, Brown, other folks could not. And it really takes a lot of this stuff to task. It doesn't like congratulate white people for doing this. I've read that. I will say that there has been a number of Black queer authors in the last couple of years, all kind of like making splashes and debuts or strides all at the same time. So, you know, alongside Frederick, there's been Rashid Newsom, Deshaun Charles Winslow, David Santos Donaldson. I'm happy to put these names in a list, but if somebody asks me for it, but there's been a lot of Black queer fiction across every kind of genre: historical, literary, contemporary, romance. For so long, a lot of Black, especially a lot of the Black gay male journalists, for so long it was like, you know, James Baldwin, Elin Harris, James Earl Hardy, and like that was it. And so like uh when you came out with a novel, you got compared to one of those, and everybody gets compared to James Baldwin, and everyone's like, you know, we respect what James Baldwin has done, but I don't want to be him, right? Like James Baldwin is James Baldwin, and it would be unfair for me to try to like replicate what he's done. Let us have our own names, our own genres, our own ways we like to write and whatnot. And it finally feels like we're at a point where there is enough saturation and capacity to have multiple authors to choose from, and you know, it's not just like one or two of us on the shelf at the same time. So where to find me? I am Aaron K. Foley everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, every platform is just first name, middle initial, last name, all one word, and I try to be as responsive as I can. So let's talk.
All right. Thank you so much, Aaron, for being here today. Katrina, what are you reading? Who do you recommend? And how can people find you?
I'm not reading anything. Burnout is a bitch. So there's that. But I just keep buying books and adding them to my TBR. So I am waiting for my brain to allow me to read Alyssa Cole's One of Us Knows. It's not a romance, but I'm like a huge Alyssa Cole fan. Another queer Black author who often writes like queer character. I just love her to death. Such a fantastic writer. It's a thriller. Big fan. And so there's that. I'm not reading her right now, but I absolutely highly recommend that people read Rebecca Weatherspoon, someone else that I love. In particular, this is like a bold recommendation, but I love At Her Feet. Like if you like kinky romances, that's good. I love her. And yeah, that's probably, I mean, I'm also reading nonfiction, but it's not interesting and it's actually quite depressing. So that's another day. That's a webinar for another day. So I would always recommend Alyssa Cole and Rebecca Weatherspoon.
All
Oh,
right.
and
Where can
you
people
can
find
find
you?
me
Yeah.
you can find me at katrinajacksonauthor.com. And I mean, I'm on social media, but honestly, I would not find me there. I don't know why. Unless you want to talk about some bullshit in DMs. In that case, I am Kat Jackson Books on Instagram. I'm always down to talk.
Well, thank you again for being here today online with all of us. So I tend to skew toward romance. When I was in a school program recently, I was doing a lot of academic reading. So let me give one academic recommendation that I think that everyone, Black and queer, or just in the queer community in general, should read. And it's a book called One Dimensional Queer. It's by Roderick Ferguson. He's a Black sociologist at Yale University. And we brought him out to speak at when I used to work at Cal State LA a few years ago. What I love about Roderick Ferguson's One-Dimensional Queer is how he really traces kind of what do you call it? How pride has been co-opted and how it was very deliberately co-opted from a people of color, political, people of all spectrums of the genders and sexuality ranges, and how it was deliberately co-opted by rich white men, those who own the Advocate, etc., into becoming more of a lifestyle and a party boy, and how do you look and what do you buy and wear and stuff. So this One-Dimensional Queer is a great book. It's readable, probably 120, 150 pages, but it's a great book, One-Dimensional Queer. On the fiction and queer romance side, this summer, 2024, I'm reading, I just finished last week reading A Little Kissing Between Friends by Chensia C. Higgins, about two women who are best friends, and they navigate what happens when you sleep with your best friend, and you got to figure out what comes afterwards. I really loved A Little Kissing Between Friends. And then this week, I just picked up a novel called The 710 Split by Carmen Lee. It's about two Black women who are teachers in a high school setting. They were kind of friends and rivals in high school. Now they're teachers who are rivals, but they've gotten assigned to lead the high school bowling team. And so now they have to have that forced proximity and work together to make this bowling team a success. And of course, all of them have a happy ever after because they're romance novels, which is the predictable fun part I like about reading romance novels when they follow the formula and everything. So those are my recommendations and everything. And I'm going to check the chat one more time to see if there's any other questions, and nothing else has come up. And so I just want to thank you all again, Aaron Foley and Katrina Jackson, for joining today online. For those of you who are watching, I know you probably had 1,000,001 choices of things to do right now. So I do value the hour you've spent with us online today. And I hope that if you're able to, whether you pick up, buy, borrow, provide ratings and reviews of any of our books, please do so. And you can find me online at frederickelsmith.com. And most of my social media, I'm online at fsmith827. So again, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. And we're going to end the Zoom webinar right now. Bye.